Welcome to the RotoWire Fantasy Soccer Show. We're talking Saturday's four-game slate at DraftKings. I'm joined by Ryan Belongia. I'm Adam Zdroik. Again, unfortunately, we cannot get Jordan Cooper's take. He will be on a future show. Just dealing with a bit of illness, so we hope to get him back shortly ahead of the World Cup. But Ryan, you're fresh off an 80-minute show talking about NFL. So if you play NFL, go watch that show as well after this one. Ryan, how's it going?
Yeah, going well, except having some problems with the internet over here. So I'm hoping we don't go out, or at least hoping I don't go out too many times. So if not, it might just be a solo pod from Adam. Hopefully not. We'll see. We'll see if we can get through this.
I should have asked Jordan for some of his takes, and then I could have just expanded on that on this show, but unfortunately, I did not.
Well,
And
fortunately, the slate might be just very easy and simple, at least from a cash game perspective. So at least we'll break it down for the people. It shouldn't be too difficult.
before the show, Ryan said if Haaland doesn't start, this might be the easiest slate he's ever played. So we're gonna get
Hmm.
into it here. We got Manchester City, pretty much one more implied goal than anyone else on the slate. Leeds is next up, and then you got Brighton, Brentford. Every match outside of the Man City match below 2.9 implied total. So I guess let's talk first if Haaland starts because we have no idea what the exact situation is. I mean, we got the Pep Guardiola quote beforehand or early this morning. So Jack Burkhart wrote our article for DraftKings. It's up on the site right now. He asked me last night what I thought Haaland's status would be, and I gave him a Pep quote that I made up myself. And it turns out my quote I made up last night was about exactly the same as what Pep said this morning. So, needless to say, we don't know. But let's start with Haaland. So, if Haaland starts, minus 270 to score, he's kind of a must in cash games if he starts, correct?
Yeah, I don't know. I was going to ask you the same
Okay.
thing. It kind of seems like he's going to start now, but obviously we have no idea. Maybe he comes on at halftime. I don't know. It seems like he's healthy and back in training. So yeah, if he starts, I don't know. You say lock for cash games. I guess he'd be very popular, and you probably just have to play him. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, he's going to be over 60, 70%, and he always has the brace upside. Even if he plays 45 minutes, you kind of can't really fade that because if he does get a brace, then you're going to be screwed. So that's really the only reasoning for it. So there's kind of no way
Okay.
around it.
So
So
yeah, let's go with that assumption that he's going to play, and that probably the smart thing to do is to roster him. Um, so then what? You mentioned Man City, 2.72 total, a goal higher than anyone else. This is one of those slates where we want to get in as much Manchester City as possible, right? So we would want Kevin De Bruyne, obviously. I'm just going to skip ahead to midfield. He's 9,900. So you're using 9,900 there, 11,900 at forward. Riyad Mahrez is 7,900, which is cheap for Mahrez. But I don't know if you're rostering Haaland and De Bruyne. Maybe you can't fit Mahrez. Is that what you think, or would you try to roster all three of them, or would you leave off De Bruyne? Or how do you see it?
I think the eventual question would be if you also want to pay up for Cancelo, because if you get Mahrez in this team, then you're kind of left with not a lot. And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're going to talk about Bamford here. Bamford is 4.1K, the second biggest favorite. He has better odds to score than De Bruyne. I think that's the move. Uh, if you're going Haaland and De Bruyne, because I think Bamford's going to be really popular in cash and tournaments because he allows you to get all these Manchester City guys. I do have a question here for you. You played Grealish, I think midweek in Champions League. You mentioned in Discord that he was taking corners over Mares or whoever. Um, you're shaking your head here, but 6,200. Uh, No, you're not playing Grealish if he
I mean,
starts.
just one of the dumbest things I ever did was play Grealish in cash on that Champions League slate. I don't know. Maybe I wouldn't say that if he got subbed off. The quote from Pep was hilarious too. He said something like, "Grealish was our best player in the first half." Like I had to take him off at halftime because he had a tough game the game before or whatever. And I guess I should have looked at that. That's one of those, man, that's one of those things. I wasn't expecting Grealish to start at all. And then he starts and I see that he's just, he's cheap. And then I look to see if I still want to play Gundogan, and Grealish took all the corners the week before. I mean, I didn't care that, I wasn't expecting Grealish to come on here and take corners. It was really just that I thought Gundogan was a bad play, especially without Rodri. That would mean Gundogan was playing as the deepest midfielder and without any sets. So then I was like, okay, well, I'm not going to play Gundogan anymore. I'll play I'll play Grealish, and then he gets subbed at half. Anyways, 6,200. Or I guess we're not quite to midfield yet. We'll talk about him when we get there. Yeah, just to echo what you said about Bamford. Funny to play Bamford and Haaland in cash, right? Two like goal dependent strikers, but I'm on the same page with you. Bamford is a cash play this week. He's just too cheap for those odds. And you could compare him to some midfielders in a second, but like for instance, João Moutinho's 4,700. I mean, I'd rather play Bamford for 41. Patrick Bamford in 45 minutes, might have a similar floor even to someone like João Moutinho. And then you add in the goal upside. So, yeah, I think Bamford's actually a pretty easy decision in cash games.
It's like so we had last season we had all the Callum Wilson, or I guess it was the Chris Wood slates where he was kind of in this range, but the difference is I think in general we just like Bamford over Chris Wood, and this matchup is home against Bournemouth, so this matchup is probably better than any matchup we saw last season for Chris Wood.
Right.
And Chris Wood was popular last season in cash games in similar situations. So you got to think Bamford could be in like the 50+% range.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess, it's rightfully so with that salary. I mean, we know Bamford. He should be, I mean, 6K in this spot. If this was last year when he was scoring goals, he'd be 7,000, even
He
8,000 on
yeah,
some slates in
Rodrigo's
this spot.
83. Rodrigo's
That's what I mean.
8.3. Yeah.
So like now I know you could say, well, Bamford, he's never going longer than 60, and that's probably true, but I still think for 4,500 or for 4,100 it's okay.
It was interesting that he actually came off the bench last match, but I think he'll start. We're looking at lineups here. Sinister is out for I don't know, a couple months or something, so he is out. So what we see with Leeds here, I guess I'll talk about it right now. Harrison, Rodrigo, Aronson, Bamford. The other guy who would probably come in is Crescencio Somerville, who I believe scored against
Mm-hmm.
Liverpool last match.
Mm-hmm.
So he's the other guy coming off the bench. He's 4.9K. He could start again. I would keep that in mind as we get into midfielders, and then I think maybe the only other guy is you got I guess Joe Gelhart. I believe played with like the U23s midweek, so I'm not sure how much minutes he'll get. And then Wilfredo Gnantu, who has gotten a lot of press in Leeds camp, but he has 18 minutes right now in the season, came against Liverpool. So those are your guys for, potential substitutes for like a Bamford, for a Rodrigo. So without Sinister in, I think it's relevant to at least mention that Leeds are kind of lacking options up front.
Yeah, definitely. No, good points.
So without Haaland, do you move to Foden and Bamford, or is it a different move?
Without Haaland, I think you move to Mahrez and Bamford.
Okay, you
Um,
go down to Mahrez. You prefer
yeah,
Mahrez over Foden.
it's not that I prefer it. It's a $3,000 difference and you can do whatever you want. Like, I mean, I don't know about you, but you know, so Foden's a better play than Mahrez. I don't know. people probably agree on that at this point. I still don't think you're going to pay 10-8 to roster Foden and then not have Mahrez in the lineup. I mean, maybe you could make an argument for rostering both somehow. I just don't see how you could roster Foden and not Mahrez when there's a $3,000 difference. It just doesn't make sense for cash games.
Yeah, we saw midweek Foden had a little better floor. It seemed like they were attacking a little more from the left side. Well, I guess he was listed as a midfielder, but yeah, the price difference here is pretty extreme. I don't think it was that extreme in Champions League. I played both Foden and Mahrez, I believe, in my cash game.
Yeah.
Mahrez got the goal. Foden had the better floor. So we'll see what happens here. I might even have doubts if Alvarez is gonna. If Haaland doesn't start, I may have doubts of Alvarez getting another start because he's really been getting a lot of minutes. We could see something to where it's like a false nine. We saw last season De Bruyne playing in a false nine role, Bernardo playing in a false nine role. So again, this is something to keep in mind when lineups come out. And I mean that's going to change some things. I'd say that would like if De Bruyne is in that role, that probably makes him more of a play in tournaments. And if Bernardo is in that role, that makes him a little more interesting than he is with the current role he's playing. So
Yeah.
no matter the case, Holland in, Holland out. We're kind of leaning on one Man City guy at forward, then Bamford, and then probably De Bruyne. Is kind of what we're leaning to here.
Yep. Definitely. Yeah, I think it's Bamford no matter what, and then with a City guy, like you said, yeah, Haaland if he starts.
All right, so I get let's
I mean,
talk
there's
about
some other
some
forwards.
yeah, let's talk about some
Sorry, go
more
ahead.
forwards here. Just for I guess for other cash ideas, but again, we have to
Right.
mention Man City have more than one goal implied total here than every other team. So if you don't go Man City, you're basically hoping they don't score. I mean, even if they only score one goal, this is like a potential to have 20-point floors for these guys.
Right.
Uh,
So can you even roster anybody else? Is that
right.
what you're saying? Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
So
can you even roster
that's
anybody else?
that's the question. Because I mean, otherwise up here, it's like, why would you spend? Why would you go with Pascal Gross at Wolverhampton instead of Mahrez? Why would you go William
Right.
instead of
Right.
Mahrez? It's like, what other options would you even go here? Is kind of
Yeah.
what I
So I think you're right. You can't really go anyone else besides you have to go a City guy in cash games. So that doesn't mean these guys are out of play though. I just think it would be one of those weird scenarios where you roster a third forward in the flex or at a midfield position. But I don't think you're rostering one over the City guys. I do think I'm interested to hear your take on this. I think for cash games, I think the best one is Gibbs White. I know quite a few people are down on Gibbs White. I like this price tag for a home spot against Brentford. So if I was considering another guy, another forward, apart from City and Bamford, I think it would be Gibbs White.
That's exactly who I was going to say next because I mean, he stands out. You said people are down on him. I just want to read off their last four matches here for Nottingham Forest: at Arsenal, home against Liverpool, at Brighton, at Wolverhampton. Not very, positive matches here for a set piece taker for Nottingham Forest. Now, home against Brentford. So one thing I want to say for this Brentford team, I'm not sure how many times that Brentford have played without Ivan Toney in the past few years, but they do not have Ivan Toney in this match. He's suspended. I'm not sure they play exactly the same way without Tony. It'll be interesting because
Mhm.
Thomas Frank likes to do this 4-3-3 against weaker opponents, and then against tougher opponents, he does the more 5-3-2, which is a little more defensive. So it'll be interesting to see how Thomas Frank attacks that, and I that's kind of what I'm interested in to see how Thomas Frank wants to play this match. If it's 4-3-3, then you got to think Brentford are a little more attacking. That'll probably leave more uh, leave the match more open than it would be if Brentford were in a 5-3-2. So I'm probably getting
Yeah.
too much into the weeds in this, but I think that's what I'm going to look at if I'm going to consider Gibbs White.
Yeah, no, I don't think you're getting too much into the weeds. I would put it sort of broadly and say Brentford always play with Ivan Toney. He's one of their best players. Now they don't have Ivan Toney. This is a new thing. So I would, I think it's a plus to Nottingham Forest is what I'm saying. Just for the fact that Brentford have to do something different, whatever it may be.
Exactly. Yeah, so that's Gibbs White.
And then, sorry, one more thing
Go
about
ahead.
Gibbs White. You mentioned those really tough matchups that he had recently. Let me see. He was very good against Liverpool. I see he scored 7 fantasy points, but he had a sure goal, empty net that was stopped by, I believe, like a sliding James Milner. Best chance to score in the entire game. He also, I forget who missed the finish, but should have had an assist near the end too. So he actually almost had a big game against Liverpool just to defend my guy Gibbs White a little. This might be the spot where, he finally puts up a 20-point game or something, gets on the score sheet.
Going further, he played 56 minutes last match, but the game was over. Steve Cooper was subbing the guys out. I think it was 3-0, 4-0 at that point. So there's no reason to continue playing his main guys further. So that's definitely.
Yep, good point. I don't think about that at all. He had a yellow card. The game was completely over. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So otherwise at forward, I don't know if people are going to look at Adama Traore, but he's 6,300. He's been a cash option in recent slates, but again, why would you go with him over Gibbs White? Not my move here. But that's kind of it for cash games. As for tournaments, maybe let's just touch on tournaments at the end, because I think it's really if you want to go full Man City or if you want to fade a couple Man City pieces. I think that's kind of what tournaments will be. So
right.
Unless you want to mention something else.
Yeah. Let's come back to it. We can just finish up the cash build.
Yeah. So De Bruyne in here. Someone was asking us in the chat if there's no Kevin De Bruyne. He played 20 minutes midweek, and the only reason he wouldn't start is if he wants to be rested ahead of the World Cup. That's the only thing I can think of why he would be rested in this spot. So I mean, home against Fulham, I guess, but you still don't want to be fully not playing ahead of the World Cup. But I just gotta assume De Bruyne is playing.
He's playing for sure. Yeah, he's playing. He's starting for sure. I mean, that's why he didn't start midweek in the Champions League. It would be something weird if he didn't start.
Mm-hmm. All right, so De Bruyne is up here. For cash games, Trossard probably not. Gundogan is ridiculously expensive. We're gonna have to mention the Leeds guys here. Harrison probably too expensive at 8,100, but you also got Tavernier 7,100. Aronson, another Leeds guy, 6,300, 1,800 cheaper than Harrison. Again, this has been the case all season. Unclear reasons why that is the case, but those are probably the other guys in the high end range that you look at in the midfield that you'd actually consider. Otherwise, you probably want to go down, unless I'm missing someone here.
No, I don't think you're missing anybody, and the decision seems pretty easy for me. Leeds is the second biggest favorite on the slate. The cheapest guy out of all those that you mentioned is Brendan Aronson. I mean, just stick him in there. Plays 90 minutes, split set pieces, has goal and assist upside. Seems pretty simple to me.
I just don't know why the prices haven't changed between Aronson and Harrison.
Right. Yeah. Just, I mean, it's probably a similar reason why Thiago is still listed as forward.
Yeah, I guess. It's just they're not even including, I don't know, stats from the past 2 months.
But, at least now Leandro Trossard is only midfield eligible. So at least they decided to go in there and switch that.
Even though he played as a forward.
Right. Even though he played as the number 9 last week. Yeah.
We got a question here. Daniel Podence over Gibbs White. Podence 6,500, home against Brighton. We did not mention him.
Um, I get it. I get it. But not if Moutinho starts. I mean, Podence is in the conversation when he's taking set pieces. I don't know, home against Brighton, not, that's a fine spot. If Moutinho wasn't in there, maybe it'd be a conversation.
Yeah, it's Matheus Nunez picked up a shoulder injury. I think their manager said 50-50. So it seems like if Nunez doesn't start, it seems like Moutinho would be the guy to start there. So just something there. Um, an interesting thing here, we have the $4,900 Somerville. He went 89 minutes last match, and that was a match without Sinistera. So again, it's going to be the same squad. And Harrison was subbed off before Somerville last match. Would you consider going Somerville over Aronson to get like I don't know, better goalkeeper, better utility, something like that? Or
I don't think for cash games. I
okay,
think I think if you're trying to do that, you might as well just go all the way down. I don't know. I guess you could say, well, you don't need to. I don't know. I think it's too risky to be a cash game play. The kid Somerville though, scoring the winner at Anfield in like the 89th minute. That was pretty cool actually. I was watching that game. I don't think you could do it though. Look, I see what you're saying though. If you told me, look, Adam, if you told me Somerville's playing 90 minutes, then I would say his floor might be good enough with Leeds being favorite. It's hard for me to trust. It's hard for me to trust that.
yeah, Leeds have a couple of just young guys that seem to have pretty bright futures. Somerville was a guy who got some time last season, but didn't get a ton. And it happened right away with Sinistera, where it was like he got one start, and Jesse Marsh was like, okay, he's going to be our guy here, and we're going to get rid of Daniel James for the season, kind of a thing. So, we do see the two starts for Somerville, 90 minutes, 89 minutes. So,
Hmm.
something to keep in mind there. But
Hmm.
otherwise, we got the Lewis Cook special is down here. Jack Burkhart mentioned him in his article. He was the I don't know if I want to say gem find of last week's show, but I think he had more than 6 fantasy points in the first half, and then he finished with 6 because he had a eventual
Yeah,
yellow card. But is he the other guy you'd want to spend down for at 3,300?
yeah, um, yeah. Cook probably should have done a little better last week. Yeah, want to spend down for him, want to roster Cook. That's like a little bit strong, but I'd be okay with it. Yeah, I think if you're gonna pay down, Cook seems like the only one. I mean, he always plays 90 minutes and takes a couple set pieces. Like, that's good enough. I see a question here from DFS Chan. How upset are we all that Willian is actually turning out to be a decent signing for Fulham? Might be time for me to, I might owe Willian a little bit of an apology. He's looked pretty decent, I gotta say. I don't know what it is. Like, he must be on the juice or something. It didn't look like he had any. I mean, he must be. It didn't when he was at Arsenal. It looked like he had no speed, no burst, no quickness. Now he's playing 90 minutes, and I watched the last couple Fulham matches, and he still looks pretty lively out there. And I was a big fan of Willian 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago. I mean, big fan of Willian. So it's good to see him succeeding. Maybe I jinxed him. Sorry everybody, I haven't played Willian basically at all, and obviously that's cost me money if you look at his fantasy scores. So I got punished for it. That happens once in a while.
I've I was not involved in the original Willian hate, so
Right.
I have no comment. So at defender here, I think you're just gonna say that Cancelo is too cheap at 6K. His upside is enormous, and if he hits his upside, if he hits 20 plus points, like that's a difference maker on this slate. I assume you're gonna lock him into cash lineups and probably
Yeah, I
tournaments, I
think
guess.
yeah, I think you have to, right? If cash for sure. There's
Like
no one
why?
else.
Why is he $200 more than Kenny Tete?
Right. Yeah. It's just you're right. Like you said, it doesn't make sense. He's a little underpriced, and there's like there's nothing else at defender. So it's one of those situations where you have a guy that's far and away the best option, and in those cases, you usually want to roster that player in cash, especially if they're not too expensive, which he's not. So yeah, not much of a decision there.
Right. So with what we just talked about, unless you get Cook as your second midfielder, you're probably not going to spend up on a second defender. Is that correct? I mean, the other
That is
option,
correct.
okay. The other options would be you got the Nottingham Forest guys. Estupinian is 5,200. Hugo Bueno is now up there. He's 5,100. I mean, you could even consider like a Pascal Strike because Leeds are favored here, 4,800. Lodi, 4,600. I mean, you just got these guys who are all fine plays, but nothing like they don't have the 20 plus point upside really. They don't really have a 10-point floor. So are they worth it to spend on? And that kind of what we're coming to is probably not. So like
Yeah, no.
Lewis Cook probably has the same floor as these defenders, right? So
Yeah, yeah, similar, right? Yeah, not gonna roster any of those guys in cash games. I think the first guy I would look at, well, they're all in the same range. I mean, you're gonna have to look at the City defenders and see who starts. If Ruben Diaz starts for 3,300, that's okay. You might get Oh, I see Akanji's questionable now, expected to be. You might get Akanji at right back. If Akanji and Ake started for City and they were the cheapest ones, you could maybe consider that. But anyways, the point is, I think the best one is Christensen, 3,800 for Leeds. It's just pretty cheap, and he actually does some stuff. Like, look at his two recent matches at Liverpool and at Leicester. Now we have a spot where Leeds is actually a decent sized favorite for once. So I think 3,800 for Christensen's decent value. I'd try to afford him.
yeah, it seems like from my perspective is that Luke Ayling is still like struggling a bit with fitness and trying to get back to what his form was because he was out so long, and that's led to Christensen holding on to his spot. So
Yeah, and
while
I
it's
think Jesse March signed him like
himself, yeah,
purposely. Like that's from that he was the right back on Marsh's last team in Salzburg.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I just noticed John Stones, who has been playing right back for Man City, is 4,900.
Yeah,
Probably not.
can't do that.
We got to mention if Rico Lewis starts at 2,800, he got the goal midweek. I doubt he starts again, but it's has to be mentioned here. I would probably
Yeah,
be. I'm probably going to be off the Man City center backs because I mean the clean sheet odds 47%. I actually think those clean
yeah,
sheet odds should be lower personally. I think Fulham are going to come into this match attacking. That's specifically what Marco Silva said, and that's kind of how Fulham play. We've seen them play against top end teams this season where they don't really back down. So and Man City
yeah,
can give up goals. So
yeah.
I
No,
wouldn't
I'm
go
with
with
you.
yeah. Go ahead.
No, sorry, I'm with you. I don't want it. I'm not paying 3,900 for City center backs.
Hmm.
Maybe if it was Ruben Diaz for 33 and you needed it as a last piece in, then okay. You mentioned Rico Lewis. Could he get another start? I don't know. 17 years old, scored on his debut in the Champions League. I think you just have to plug in Rico Lewis if he were to start for that price.
Yeah. Yeah, it's otherwise it's I guess I should mention if you are confused, there's two Steve Cooks on the slate.
Mm.
Um
Two?
wait, no, one's Lewis Cook,
Two.
I'm sorry. There's
Right.
two
Okay.
Cooks.
Two
There's two
cooks. Two
Cooks. Okay.
cooks. Right.
We were talking about Lewis Cook. Steve Cook is the defender who we don't really want to play. He's on Nottingham Forest. Just to clear that up. Two cooks in the kitchen, but I mean, that's kind of it defensive wise. Otherwise, it's center backs, and I guess the lead center backs are kind of cheap, but it's a lead center back.
Right. It's
So,
like, you know, it's a very boring slate for cash games. And it's just like, it's really easy. Like, sort of like we mentioned. I mean, there's not even decisions. Let's just say if Haaland starts, I mean, it's Haaland and Bamford, it's De Bruyne, it's Cancelo, Aronson, Christensen. Maybe you can't afford all of those guys. If you're putting that lineup in, you might not be able to afford Ederson. I think it's perfect. Let's move to goalie. What do you think? Is Ederson a must in cash, or are you okay with not playing him?
should we phone in Jordan Cooper for this one?
Yeah,
Uh,
you know, whenever I think of these questions, Jordan's always the first one I think of. You know, he likes to spend up at keeper. I used to spend up at keeper more than almost anybody. Saramac spends up at keeper. I found myself not doing it as much lately. It's cost me some, that's for sure. These expensive keepers seem to get their clean sheets more often than not. This slate, though, if you play Ederson, you're going to have to make a concession somewhere. And I don't know that I want to make that concession. So I don't know. Like, what do you think about Ederson?
well, with what we were just talking about, would you want Ederson and like a 2.5K defender, or do you want Christensen and a cheaper goalkeeper? I think that's
Right. Okay. Yeah. When you put it that way, I guess you can make a better argument for Ederson. I guess some people would say, like, is it really worth to have Christensen over just some random center back? Is it really worth it if you're going to get Ederson? I don't know. Is it? I don't know. What do you think?
so. I mean,
Maybe not. Maybe not. I don't know.
based off what I just said, like I just don't. I think Jordan would spend up on goalkeeper
I
because
think so too.
47%, that's, 12% higher than the next team, 17% higher than the next. So it's like you got the advantage there, but man, it just like
So I'm trying to see.
me personally,
Yeah,
I
you
think the clean
personally.
sheet percentage should be lower. I don't think it should be as high because, well, if you read my betting article, check out my betting article. I wrote about this one, and as a spoiler, I'll give a spoiler out. I took both teams to score in this match. It's about even odds, and because I think Fulham are going to score in this match. So
Okay.
if I
So,
think that, I don't want to play Ederson. That's kind of where I'm coming from.
right. Right. I see what you're saying. Okay. Well, I'm looking at this construction that we've been talking about, and both cooks actually might be in play, because if you use this construction,
I
you're gonna have to put Steve Cook at utility.
I
You only
did
have
that too.
26.
Yep.
You only so
Two cooks in the kitchen.
Yep. So I don't know though. Maybe Jordan would say he's not going to play Brendan Aronson then. I don't, and you
Right.
play Eder. You don't play
Even go to
Brendan Aronson.
Somerville. Right.
Yeah, I could, or like maybe you could go to Lewis Cook even. Then
Hmm.
what could you do? I don't know if that. Yeah, maybe. That's an option. I think the people that try to play Haaland, De Bruyne, Cancelo, Ederson. Yeah, it looks tough to afford Brendan Aronson. So yeah, maybe he's the concession. Again, like, I don't want to do that though. I don't know. I find myself on the opposite side of this one. If these were lineups, I don't know if I'd play Ederson. I'm leaning against it.
I think, I mean, it's pretty clear that what we were just talking about, you could just plug in Somerville instead of Aronson and that lineup works. So if you want to
Oh,
go with
I see what you're
Ederson,
saying.
yeah, if you go Ederson, that lineup
Dude,
actually works.
Somerville and Bamford in cash. Somerville and Bamford in cash. I mean,
Let's do
what
it.
is the world coming to?
Well, it's either that or two cooks in the kitchen. Your choice.
Oof. Or it's just no Ederson.
True. Yeah, just in terms of goalkeeper though. So like we have I don't know, we have the cheap Jose Sa at 4,400, even cheap even a cheap Dean Henderson at home. They just held Liverpool scoreless at home. Brentford don't have Ivan Toney. Like I think
You
these
just
home
nailed it.
goalkeepers, right? I think these home goalkeepers are fine.
You just
Um,
nailed it. Yep.
so
Seriously, I mean,
that's why I
no,
don't
go
want to
ahead.
go Ederson.
Yeah. Dean Henderson, man, 4,600. He makes that lineup work perfectly.
Hmm.
And really, no Ivan Toney seals the deal. Seals the
Right.
deal for me. So I'd be fine with that. Now, what happens is we usually get some surprises in these lineups. So, I'll tell people if I can get to Ederson rather comfortably, that's what I'm going to do. I mean, you want to play Ederson in cash games if you can. I don't think it's a must. So if these were the lineups, all of these expected lineups that we have here, yeah, I might not play Ederson then.
Yeah, and then I think if it's obviously if Haaland doesn't start, then it's easier. It's much easier to play Ederson.
Oh yeah, that's sort of what I mentioned. There's a lineup where if Haaland doesn't start, it's just the easiest lineup I've ever seen. I could
Yeah, and
almost,
that one includes Ederson, right?
yeah, yeah, and you can pretty much make it for yourself yeah, if, if you just put Mahrez and Bamford and Ederson. But yeah, yeah. Anyways,
Mm. Yeah, those are the two goalies that just stand out for me in home matches. I mean, we just saw Brighton get 4 goals against Chelsea, but we said it last week. I mean, I almost want to. I guess I didn't even play Brighton, guys. Now that I think about it, in that King of the Pitch lineup, but like we were like, this is Graham Potter's former players. Like they came up for that match. Are they going to repeat that? They had trouble scoring in all their prior matches, so I just like these cheaper goalkeepers here.
me
Um,
too.
so all right, so in tournaments here, let's look at the overall slate here. So we know the Manchester City guys are going to be popular. So my
Hmm.
thoughts on the other matches are, I like Leeds to win. I'm not sure how many goals will happen in that match. I think if we see Brentford come out a little more defensive in a 5-3-2, I think that one's going to be scoreless or a 1 goal match. And then, even though the odds don't say it, I think there's a chance that Brighton Wolverhampton match is a game that could have 4 or 5 goals. Maybe that sounds great.
Wow.
It sounds crazy, but like with the way Brighton are playing and the fact that Wolverhampton, like we look at Wolverhampton and it's like, okay, this team is super defensive. They're always really good defensively, but I mean, if you look at some of these results here, they actually haven't been that good defensively. In their last home match, they gave up 4 goals against Leicester because they got destroyed on the counter while they're attacking for the majority of that match. I mean,
Well, it's a
they're
huge plus that Diego Costa is not going to start. So
right.
that's
I mean, I'm just
so
saying, just for tournaments, like I think that sure that one could be like a 1 goal, 0 goal game, but I think like there's a world in which there's 4 or 5 goals in that match, and no one is gonna look for it.
yeah.
That's
Okay, I see it. Yeah,
Am
your
I gonna
boy
play a
Deserve,
lineup like that?
Your boy Deserby, huh?
I mean, I mean these Brighton matches, there's more fantasy points in these Deserby matches than the Graham Potter matches.
Yeah,
I
they've looked
mean,
good.
yeah, so like last match they went to 4 in the back and like Pascal Gross was playing right back kind of thing with the Stupinian at left back because Joel Veltman was out. We didn't know it was going to happen and then it turned into Pascal Gross playing right back. So just I mean at Wolverhampton it looks like a defensive matchup on paper, but I'm just saying it's possible. Will I do I because I'm coming out here and
You
saying
will do
that
it.
I
Yep.
now have to do it. So I'm gonna
Yep.
put some
Exactly.
lineup together that's gonna involve I don't know who's gonna score for Wolves, which is the main problem when doing this, but Adama in there. Obviously, we're gonna get Trossard. Trossard's gonna be what sub 5% because he's so
Hmm.
expensive. No one's gonna look at
Hmm.
him. Someone I think is DFS Chan, of course, mentioning Mitoma got the start last week. Solomon March, those guys are always in play. So there's a route to that. But so what are your thoughts here for tournaments? is your first move to just plug in six Man City guys and go with that, or try to do something else and get maybe two, three Man City guys?
Yeah, man. I don't. It really depends on the lineup. So let's just say Haaland's gonna start. I could get on board with fading Haaland. I think I'm to that point now. I've been taking some more risks this season in GPPs in fading that sort of stuff. It hasn't necessarily worked out yet, but that's probably what I would do, and then try to mix in some of these guys that no one's going to play. The other route, of course, you can jam in City, which is what I would have done in seasons past. I just always jam City in this spot and then find, the cheap guys that I like best. And I still probably will do that too. I mean, that construction wins quite often on this slate. There just isn't that much. I mean, you mentioned the Wolves. I mean, all these matches have low totals, and they're just like teams. People, you don't really want to roster Fulham against City. You don't really want to roster Bournemouth. You don't really want to roster Brentford away. I don't know. Maybe some people do, but there's just not a lot of appealing spots. So I don't know. I kind of like Nottingham Forest if I have to pick out one. You talked about Gibbs White. My guy Brennan Johnson is 4,400. Might be back in the starting lineup. Forest have had tough matches, like you mentioned, and I like these teams when they're coming or when they're at home after a run like they've had, similar to Leeds. Like, it's a good spot for Leeds too. When these teams are at home as favorites, that's the time when you want to target them.
Yeah, so I guess going back to Man City here. Um, Actually, before we leave the Nottingham Forest conversation, I'll point out Ryan Yates here. Always a shot in the dark, 3,200. Last home match, he had a couple shots on target against Liverpool. Just like a cheap guy that, one of these guys who could come up with a random goal. I don't think he's like your usual. He's not your like Koyate, who's probably not going to. Well, actually, I feel like Koyate already scored the season, so maybe I'm mistaken. Yeah, he did. All right.
I
Well,
see. I see. Jack says no Mbuemo. That's a good call, actually. Without Tony, I don't know. What are they going to do? Is Mbuemo, who's going to lead the line? Wissa? Are they going to go with a different formation? Yeah, like you mentioned, we just don't really know. This might actually be a decent spot for Mbuemo, though. I've just sort of been off him, but I've been off him because he was getting subbed. I mean, we spoke about it, but he's still pretty good for fantasies. You look at his game log, and he has goal and assist upside, especially against Forest. I just mentioned Forest. I don't know. Like, it's just, if you prefer the Brentford side of that matchup, it's fine. I mean, that's a pick'em game.
mhm.
I don't know, something about Forest. I'm just drawn to Forest. I don't know why. Something about Steve Cooper. I kind of like Steve Cooper. I don't know. Like, they need the points in spots like these. So if there's ever a time to play him, it's now.
I think so. Yeah, Matthias Jensen went off with a dead leg. It seems like he's fine. I mean, if he wasn't in there, that'd probably be a boost for Mbuemo because set pieces and everything. But it's kind of, you'd think that because Tony isn't playing, that Mbuemo is going to be like, okay, he's going to get 90. But Brentford are so deep, and they change formations mid match often, that I'm not sure how much it matters that Tony isn't in there, because we see the starting 11 here, the projected starting 11, like Damsgaard back in there. They got Lewis Potter coming off the bench. They got all their midfielders, that like Onyeka, and I guess Norgard's been back in training as well. So they got all these guys where any one of the front six guys in this 4-3-3 can be subbed off, and that's why Embuemo's been going off for every match this season, unlike last year. So even though Tony isn't in there, that's still a worry for me. So
Yep.
um,
No, me too. I think you're exactly right.
mhm. Nico Williams, if he starts, he was crushing it the first month of the season with 4 points. For cash games, no, he's no longer on set pieces when Gibbs White is in there. So, like I've been off of him for a long time now.
Yeah, for tournaments, I think it'd be okay though. I
Right.
don't like. I think for tournaments, it's not going to be very popular to spend up at both spots. So I don't know. You could play a guy like Nico with Cancelo, or instead of him. I don't know. I think so. What do you think about City though? I mean, I'm just what I think
Yep.
is, I think if you uh, I think if you got the Stones, this is a spot to fade some of these City guys. I don't know. Like I'll make my case is that Foden is very expensive, so he's going to need a big game to beat you. Same with Haaland. You can survive one goal from Haaland, no problem. Uh, Problem is he scores two or three most of the time. Look, I get it. It's become like such a sure thing that you just feel like you can't fade guys in these spots. Um, I don't know. I think you can. I don't know. Maybe to talk some sense into me. I don't know what you think.
If Holland starts,
Oh, and then
I,
Mahrez 7,900, amazing price, but gonna get subbed at 60 minutes or whatever. That's just you figure that in there. He can bust. He was busted in the Champs League. He had 6 points or something, 5 points until he scored that goal at the end. He played 90 minutes there. He starts here. Grealish comes on for him at the 60-minute mark or something. Whoever does. So like all these guys can bust. That's all I'm saying. Now, of course, they can go out and score five too, but I don't know. I just like to think it's not that easy. It's just not that automatic, even though it has been with City.
yeah, for tournaments, I think if Holland starts, I'm 100% going to fade him in tournaments.
I
Uh,
love it.
it's just that he's coming off his injury. I know even if he only gets 60 minutes, he could score 3 goals, and that's fine, and I'll let it beat me. But he's gonna be popular. So if this was 2 months ago, it wouldn't be 100% for me. But now coming off this injury, pretty much 100% that he's not gonna be getting 90 minutes. I think it's pretty clear that it's an easy fade for me here. I'd probably pick one of the higher end guys. It's going to be De Bruyne. Pretty simple there. As for and because like people are going to have two expensive Man City guys in their lineups, then that likely means like a Rodri won't be popular, Bernardo Silva won't be popular, Grealish won't be popular.
Hmm.
So I'd look at one of those guys depending on the lineup. If Bernardo's in his more defensive role, I don't really like that. So probably not going to play him. So I'd rather take a chance on someone like Rodri, who is $1,800 cheaper, and he's always seems like every match he's taking a shot from 30 yards out. So 5,700 Rodri, those guys aren't going to be popular. But yeah, this is it's not the exact same thing, but midweek we had like a PSG, those Mbappe and Messi. Everyone was like, "Yeah, got to play those guys," kind of a thing. And I mean, my thoughts with that was just like you need 30 points from them to make it be worth it because they're so expensive. And that's kind of what we're here with Foden and Haaland. Like you need the 30, almost 30 points to make it worth it because when you get those guys, you got to punt at some positions really. Uh,
Yeah,
so that's kind of what my thought process is. I'd
unless you're
rather
right. Yeah, so I agree with you. Unless all the other games bust, then you don't need 30 points. Then no,
right. It's
seriously,
not
these other games have some low totals, and there's only three other ones. So I'll just play the other side. You can win with Foden scoring you 14 and like one goal from Haaland. I mean, it is possible. Like there's not that much else on this slate that you really need to fade. I mean, there can be, but also these games can bust a lot. One other thing I'll say is just like a random thing, like Julian Alvarez starts, and if Haaland is on the bench, like I couldn't imagine rostering Alvarez for 9,500. There's like you see that there's a 50% chance that Haaland's coming on at halftime. Now, Alvarez can still do it, obviously, but I don't know, just some of the stuff that I'll look for.
Yeah, that makes sense. 9,500 for a possible 45 minutes from Alvarez. Not going to cut
Right.
it. But yeah, what I was going to say is obviously this is not like Jordan would have yelled at me for my comparison probably because this is obviously not the same slate as we had with PSG. Since Man City are such big favorites, like if these matches go to how the odds go, like a team with six Man City players will probably win. Like you'll win with
Mm-hmm.
a Man City center back and Ederson getting a clean sheet or something. Like you'll win with if Man City win 4-0 and there's four combined goals from the other three matches, like six Man City guys are probably going to win some tournaments. So, but that will be the most popular move though. So
Mm-hmm.
that's why we're obviously
Yeah, no, you're
suggesting
right.
other
Yeah,
things.
you're right. The Man City stack will win this slate.
That's it. That's all you got.
Nope, I'm back now.
Oh, your
Headphone ran
headphones.
out of
Okay.
battery. Okay, yeah. The city slate, the city stack will win this slate, quite often, as you mentioned. But it's going to be so popular, especially on this slate. It's going to be so popular. You're going to see so many similar lineups. I'm anxious to see what people do in the smaller field stuff, like the king of the pitch stuff. That's I keep saying it. If you're okay with embracing a bit more risk, then it's a spot to fade some of the city guys.
All right, last question here. As I'm looking at the lineups, actually maybe a couple here. So Fulham, you have are you no interest in Fulham in tournaments?
No, man, I'm not that guy.
Okay.
I could maybe you. I know you sometimes like to play these massive underdog spots. It's like I said, I don't think it's the worst thing because City still give up chances and they've been scored on, and Fulham could do it. So I'll let you talk about that. I mean, I'm more likely I'll play Wolves like before that. Podence,
Okay.
Sadama, even He-Chan if he starts. I already mentioned Forest. Of course, we like Leeds. I'll leave Fulham to you. Are you considering that?
So it was easy last week because we had Bournemouth home against Tottenham, and Kiefer Moore was, I don't know, 4K or something. It was a little bit different.
Yeah, that was nice.
So the question is, if this match goes like a 4-2, Fulham get 2 goals, like can you win tournaments because these guys are expensive, like Mitrovic, like these guys are all around 7K, so it's not even like they're the 5K. It's like, okay, maybe they get 2 goals, but they're still not going to get that many chances. So
right, I see what. Yeah, right. It's tough to play. It's even tougher to play when they're this price against City. I see what you're saying. 2 goals would definitely be enough, though.
Okay.
How likely are they to score 2? I don't know. But yeah, that'd be enough. There's not going to be. There's probably not going to be that many goals on this slate. So yeah, that would still be enough. I mean, outside of.
Oh wow, Kiefer Moore is 6,700 now. Okay, I guess he was only 5,400 last week. I was gonna mention Bournemouth here because Leeds have been really sketchy at times defensively, but all their guys are pretty expensive, so maybe I'm not even gonna question that. I guess you got Philip Billing in here at 5K. He always seems to pop up on the score sheet when you least expect it. So, but yeah.
Yeah, I think Solanke would be fine if somebody wants to take a shot. Only because like he's the same price as Gibbs White, the same price as Aronson. So just you could get like big leverage with guys like that. Nobody likes to play Solanke, but guy has upside. I mean, he's the most likely of Bournemouth to score. It's always going to be that way, and Leeds concede goals. So that's something that's like more of something that I'd take a shot on if I'm looking for a guy that no one's going to play, or like an Embuemo, like Jack mentioned, those types of guys, because no one's really going to play them either. And I just think they're more likely to do it than the Fulham guys.
I'd say it depends on the formation again. Like if Kiefer Moore is there, like him as like the point man.
Yeah, good call. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, good call. You're right, actually. I was speaking as if Solanke is the only striker in there. If Kiefer Moore is in there, it's different. Then yeah, you're right.
All right, I think that is all we have, unless there's something else. Unless you want to like recommend Ruben Diaz for a goal or something like that.
Man, I mean, we've rambled on. I mean, DFS Chan said it. I mean, this slate blows. I mean, he's right. I mean, it's hard to talk about. It's hard to talk about slates like these. I mean, we keep saying that the optimal thing to do is just jam City. There's not much else. If you know, if you're a game theory guy and what can take some risks and like taking these risks, then it's a spot to fade City. It's really that simple. I mean, if you're the type of guy that puts in the optimal lineup, then you stack City. It's that simple, you know.
Ryan, should I enter this Wolves Brighton lineup here in the what is it, the $5 king of the pitch, or is it
Absolutely.
the 20 or the $25 one? Is it the 25?
I didn't see it. Is there a 25 this week?
Maybe it's 150. Sorry.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd put it in the 150. Unfortunately, there's not a 25 this week, but I think it's a perfect lineup to put in the $5.
Do you usually play like more cash builds kind of thing in the bigger ones, like a 150?
Yeah, that's a good question, man. I used to. I still do sometimes.
There's 4 spots left. I have to decide if I feel like I want to play it on this stupid slate or not.
I it's a complicated subject. I go back and forth of what I want to do. I think I've sort of gotten away from what I used to do well, or from what I've had success doing. I've sort of gotten away from that a little bit this year. After, for lack of a better way of putting it, after winning the king of the pitch, sort of get a little lazy, complacent, sort of like sometimes maybe more of a not give a fuck sort of attitudes toward things. But that's bad. I mean, it causes you to make a lot of mistakes. I mean, I made a lot of easy mistakes, simple mistakes this season that I just wouldn't have made in the past. But in those smaller field stuffs, yeah, sometimes I've been taking more chances than I should, especially recently, like fading chalk where I would never fade chalk. Like, get confused that like this is not NFL where you can fade anybody, or some of the other DFS sports. Sometimes like I convince myself that you can fade these guys that you just can't fade, and it hasn't been working out for me when they put up 20-point floors or score 2 goals like right in your face. No, I don't know. This is, still a relatively small sample, and there's some luck involved too, and a few things one way or the other. Maybe it would have been working out. I don't know. To answer your question, it's tough. Every slate's different. But yeah, I guess if I had to come up with a definitive answer, I still think you can win those small field contests just by putting in the best lineup. There's some slates though where you do that and you look and just everybody does that. I mean, you got a lot of the guys that play the smaller field stuff, they take no chances. And some of these guys, like, while they're good players, they're like, for lack of a better term, just chalk donkeys. I mean, they will never get off the chalk, and they play cash lineups in that stuff all the time. You can't believe some of the plays that they make, but these are successful players too. So I don't know. There's more than one strategy, obviously, and it's a combination of both, and it's always slate dependent. And again, it's what makes everything so tough.
All right, there we go. Wise words from the king of the pitch winner there. But that's all we got. We've been talking about this awesome slate for an hour now. So if you've been watching on YouTube or Twitter, make sure to like and subscribe on YouTube. But also this cheat sheet that we got, rotowire.com/soccer trial, free 10-day trial. You're gonna need a trial. You're gonna need a subscription once World Cup starts, because you know what? We have all this stuff for the World Cup, and that's coming in a couple weeks. So you better get on that subscription. But for now, Ryan, you can find him at Ryan Belongia. I am at Zdroik. We'll be back next week for the final Premier League slate before the World Cup. Ryan, thank you, and good luck to everyone.
Yep. Thanks, Adam. Good luck, everybody.